CNN are boycotting the White House Christmas party. Sarah Sanders, well, she's seeing the bright side. She said, quote, "Christmas comes early. Finally good news from CNN." And she was then retweeted by her boss, President Trump, who added, "Great, we should boycott fake news CNN. Dealing with them is a total waste of time." You can't blame the president. And with coverage like this, for example.
I have a whole lot to say about this president's increasing erratic behavior over the past week or so.
We have an Archie Bunker-in-chief who is disrespecting American Indians and making classless jokes from the podium.
If you think you've had an earful of Donald Trump, check out what's in the ear of a beagle in Britain named Chief. Brace yourself.
Is this president trying to impersonate Hugo Chavez, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Vladimir Putin?
Apparently, the president gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
At the dessert course.
All right, we can go on, especially Humpty Dumpty. It could be a full hour. Now, Trump isn't the first president to have unkind words for members of the media. You may remember Obama didn't particularly like me.
In 2012, Latinos voted at record numbers. The next day, even Sean Hannity changed his mind and decided immigration reform was a good idea. Rudy Giuliani said, "Putin is what you call a leader." Mike Huckabee and Sean Hannity keep talking about his bare chest, which is kind of weird. With respect to Sean Hannity, I didn't know that he had invited me for a beer. His opinion of me does not seem to be very high, but I'm always good for a beer. I'll put Mr. Burgess up against Sean Hannity. He'll tear him up.
Oh, threat of violence? I was never invited to a White House Christmas party during the Obama administration. Not that I would have gone. Here with reaction, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Really, CNN? Really? Your reaction?
Well, look, I think it was very gracious for the president and the first lady to open up the White House, the People's House, to so many people, the armed services, members of guests, and folks for this Christmas season to see the People's House. It's the First Lady and her team just did a marvelous job decorating it. The video's out there for all to see. And what I think is interesting, Sean, and for people who don't understand, traditionally, at least in the last several years from what I understand, invitations were given to bureaus, and they were allowed to invite, X number of people to the White House Christmas party. And a lot of times those were distributed to television and media executives and on-air talent. What the White House did this year was really go through a arduous process of trying to make sure that the people who worked in the White House media corps, the technicians, the sound people, the lighting individuals, the people who go to the White House day in and day out to work on behalf of these media organizations without the glamour and glitz of being an executive or on-air talent, got invited and got to bring a spouse or a partner or a son or a daughter. And what CNN's decision to do, make sure that these individuals who really probably look forward to going can't go anymore. And you've got an organization like Politico that's out there surveying people on whether or not they'll take a picture with the president. And yet some of that same organization has reporters asking the White House if they can get invited or bring a guest. And so it is these media types, CNN and Politico, that are doing a disservice to the gracious act that the president and the first lady have offered so many of these individuals, not just the on-air talent and the executives, but those technicians that really work hard and labor on behalf of those organizations to get the news and the broadcast out.
I don't know how you put up with their crap for all the time that you were press secretary, to be honest. You have the patience of Job. I remember one year I said to Fox, I said, well, was I invited? And they laughed. And they said, no, you weren't invited. I didn't take it personally, by the way. I used to joke about it.
Well, again, I think that it's always, the way that people are viewing this one now is very myopically. It's always through the lens of Trump, not through the context of, what happened during the Obama years. But again, I'll go back to the fact that this White House, under President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, have reached out and graciously tried to make the White House, the People's House, and the decorations
I never did that. That's great.
But something that these people can come and share with their family and friends, because so many of these individuals really do work hard behind the scenes and aren't there for their family, and they get to bring them for the first time, and it's a shame that they won't be able to participate because CNN's executives have done this.
I appreciate it. When we come back, I need your help. I have a huge decision, an announcement. Next. All right, Christmas just around the corner, and like many Americans, I am busy deciding which photos to use on my annual Christmas card, which I really don't send out. I'm making pretend here, and I need your help. It's kind of like fake news. Should I use this photo of me, that's me in the high chair there, as a baby, the man in the left-hand corner in the back of my grandfather, my sisters were in the photo, or I was thinking maybe this gem from the New York Times. The middle one is the actual cover of the New York Times Sunday magazine. That's maybe one of my best pictures ever. So, which one of those photos should I send out? You decide. At Sean Hannity on Twitter, Hannity.com, and I'll actually make a real Christmas card this year. Let us know.
Now, you know what the left, I think, ultimately is most afraid of here? Not that Trump is going to fail, but that he's actually going to succeed. So they use the word madman to undermine his credibility while setting up this narrative to oust him from office, delegitimize the election, pull it back. Now, last night I asked someone who knows a little bit about the president, Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and I asked him his appraisal of Trump's mental state.
Those accusations are absolutely outrageous. I mean, I speak to the president on a virtually daily basis, and I'm involved with him all the time on all these issues. And that kind of accusation is totally baseless and outrageous. I think those kind of accusations are completely off-base and irresponsible. Let's argue over the issues.
But the left and a smattering of defiant never-Trumpers, they don't want to talk about the issues. And the crazy talk allows them to divert attention from all the good the president has done already for the United States. Let's tick off a few. A booming economy. GDP just revised up to 3.3%. Stock market, we all know, hit an all-time high today of 24,000. Christmas retail sales up already this season. They slashed red tape to boost investor confidence, unleashing small businesses across the United States. He's rolled back regulations that strangle business growth, restoring common sense conservatism, trying to drain the swamp, having some success at moribund bureaucracies like the State Department. And he's nominating a record number of federal judges and courts across the land. And finally, returning fire in the one-sided trade war with China. It almost gets no coverage. It's that $250 billion worth of deals he brought back after that trip to Asia. He's finally launching a real anti-dumping case against Chinese aluminum manufacturers. And now, get this, now he's working with our European allies to oppose China at the WTO. Came out just hours ago. They're opposing market economy status for China. That's huge news. But where's all the media reporting and obsessing on all that? Top Trump aide Stephen Miller just told the Washington Examiner if media coverage was fair, unbiased, down the middle, there'd be 100 stories about the unstoppable momentum and energy of the Oval Office. That's the same thing they did in a way to my old boss, Ronald Reagan. They branded him a doddering old actor while trying to sabotage his agenda. And remember, these are the same people who got the election wrong. They said the stock market would tank once Trump got elected. And now they're desperately trying to revive their own reputations by defaming the president. And they hope they get what they want in the end, removing him from office. That's what all the crazy talk about. And frankly, I think that's crazy. And that's the angle. Joining us now to discuss what's really going on, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Garland Nixon, a radio talk show host. Garland, let's start with you. I mean, that's quite a montage of people, both in politics and the media, declaring Donald Trump basically either has dementia or is mentally unsound.
Well, you know, I think they may be out of line making a scientific diagnosis, but I don't think it's unreasonable when the president tweets out something that could literally start World War III one day, and the next day he's in a Twitter war with a 19-year-old college basketball player, to say that that's out of line. So the president is acting in ways that I think we would have to question whether or not the president of the United States should consider a reasonable way to act, to lead the nation, and to be the leader of the free world.
So you're saying basically if he didn't tweet, we would have a booming stock market. You know, he's dealing with China in a way that I haven't seen any president, really any president in my lifetime deal with China, which is really common sense, pragmatic. It's not partisan, it's pragmatic. All this stuff's happening on the economic front. He's working with our allies in Europe. So if he didn't tweet, He wouldn't be mentally unsound.
Well, I'm not talking about the tweets. I'm talking about what's in the tweets. He's suggesting, the president is suggesting that the only way to fix the problem with North Korea, which would be prevent war, is to start World War III with North Korea and China.
Did he say that? That's not what he said. Molly, go ahead.
Right, and I think, there's certainly room to have problems with his tweets. I mean, just this week alone, there have been many problems with his tweets.
No.
There's his rhetoric, but then there's also just the reality. And when you look at the reality of his foreign policy, he's actually got some of the more restrained foreign policy that we've seen going back to someone like Eisenhower. It's funny to hear people talk about like worrying about getting into wars. Well, that's what the last three administrations have done, or the last several administrations have done, is get us into wars needlessly. He does have a different foreign policy posture. He does want to convey his seriousness with North Korea, and I think those tweets are not more directed toward North Korea so much as directed toward China and getting China to take seriously. Again, his rhetoric could use a lot of improvement, but people who are observing it need to separate that rhetoric from the reality of that presidency. And from the reality, he's actually operating as a pretty mainstream president with a lot of accomplishments to back him up.
Well, see, I think what we're talking about here is that he doesn't understand apparently he doesn't understand the gravity of that rhetoric. We could be talking about, everybody remembers the shot heard around the world. Well, we don't want the tweet heard around the world. And what a lot of people are saying is you don't seem to grasp that when you make these kinds of boisterous, tweets about North Korea, one person just slips on the trigger, and now all of a sudden,
Probably not that simple.
Military historian Victor Davis Hanson says there is no evidence in history of an errant word causing a war. And we have had a lot of rhetoric from the previous administrations warning North Korea about destruction if they continued with their nuclear capabilities. Nothing has stopped them. Absolutely nothing. Everything about our posture for the last several decades has done nothing to keep them from the path that they're on.
What I think is crazy? This is what I think is crazy, and it's happened under both Republican and Democrat administrations. I think leaving the border open and very, very unsecured was crazy. I think letting China become such a dominant economic and military power, I think that was crazy. I think taking Mubarak out was crazy. I think doubling down and doubling down and doubling down again in these Middle East conflicts that are quagmires that we can't get out of. I think there's a lot of craziness to go around, and maybe people are really polished and they give speeches that maybe don't wander off so much as sometimes Trump can, but the policies have been crazy. They've hollowed out our middle class. That is craziness that had real-world effects. So, and I'm talking Bush, Obama, Clinton, crazy town to let China get to where China is today. They all did it. All of them. Go ahead.
It's almost like we're in the exact inverse of the Obama presidency, where everything was very polished and considered. The public statements were always very presentable. And then in the background, you're having this absolutely destructive policies with Iran, all these destabilization, thinking even about what we did in Libya, convincing Muammar to get rid of his weapons and then destabilizing that regime. That's the kind of stuff that affects North Korea and makes North Korea think that they need to go nuclear. Maybe these polished
giving 20% of our uranium capacity to a country that is one of our adversaries, or at least a company connected to Putin, I think that's crazy. Well, that's really crazy to me. Maybe I'm just the one who's totally nuts here, but I think that's crazy.
Well, you're never going to get me to promote neocon war policies, that's for sure. So if you're
But they want him out of office. They want him out of office. They want to remove him from office using the 25th Amendment. Don't you agree with that?
I think there are people who are starting to move in that direction, but I think it's not unreasonable to question. Recently, now we already know the president had copped to the Billy Bush tapes, and recently now he seems to have forgotten that.
Reportedly, well, he called
unnamed sources. He called it locker room talk, which he actually won doing that. He won. He did that. He got away with it. Yeah. But now he seems to have forgotten, and now he's saying, "Oh, maybe."
I'll be considered crazy if I blow through another hard break. It's great having both of you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.